Bonjour everyone and welcome to my channel, The Waves of Your Soul. Today I'm gonna be showing you my top underrated oracle decks. This is actually part 2 because I have recently put out my top underrated tarot decks video. You seem to have really enjoyed it. I thought I would do my favorite underrated oracle decks. So those today I'm gonna be showing you oracle decks that I believe are underrated because I don't see them a lot being shown on Instagram, on Facebook, on TarotTube, in pick a card readings. I feel like those decks maybe have gone a bit under the radar. Maybe they have been around for longer than others and so they have kind of gone under the rug a little bit because new decks have come out since. Some of those could be more recent, but maybe they didn't get as much attention as some other releases, and so I just wanted to share with you decks that I believe deserve a little bit of their moment of glory, oracle decks that I don't see a lot and yet I feel like in my collection they are underdogs, they are underrated generally speaking, and they deserve their moment to shine, because don't we all? So if it is your first time here, I want to say a huge welcome. My name is Marine. I'm a French tarot reader and I love everything tarot, oracle and self-empowerment related. I love everything that is tarot, oracle deck related. I post lots of videos about that. I also post empowering tarot readings, pick a card readings, intuitive guidance, those kind of videos. I love it all. And so if you would like to see any more of those things on your timeline, then make sure to hit the subscribe button. I upload every single week and I would love to have you join the tide. So let's get started with my first underrated oracle deck, and that is the Numinous Astro deck. So I keep mine in a little pouch because, to be honest, I don't even remember what the box was like, but in my memory it was shit, so I threw it away. It does come with a proper guidebook, and here are the cards. So this is actually an astrology kind of themed oracle deck, and I don't have many oracle decks themed around astrology. That's because I love learning about astrology, but it's not something I consider myself very knowledgeable in any sense, shape or form. Like, I'm definitely more of a tarot person, but I definitely enjoy learning astrology, and this is why I got this deck. And I feel like amongst all of the different astrology decks out there, I never see this one mentioned anywhere. So this is and I feel like it's a bit of a shame, especially if you are wanting to learn astrology, because I find this one very helpful. I've had it for a few years already and I'm definitely enjoying learning astrology with it. So as you can see, you've got two parts here. You've got the cards, so here are the backs, kind of like a collage style artwork, and for each of the cards you're gonna get a title, so you're gonna get the name of either signs, so astrological signs, planets, and movement, such as like quincux. What is that? 100% the hardest word you could ever get me to say with my French accent. What the fuck is that? You have different cards for each of the astrological signs. You have cards for each of the planets, for all of the houses, and some of them for the movements. They have a title here, so for Cancer they associate that to the archetype of the doula, which I think is really cool. And then here you have lots of keywords, lots of different keywords, and I think that this is brilliant to learn about astrology. This deck has really helped me understand a little bit more about different signs and different planets, and now I'm at the stage where I'm learning about different houses. I've had this deck for a few years already, but it's been so great to learn astrology with, because I love the fact that it's got keywords. I love the fact that it has an imagery as well to help you, and I love the fact that you can just jump off straight with the first keyword as well. So overall this deck is really cool and I never see it shown anywhere. I have used this as well as like altar cards, so if I know that right now there would be like a Mercury retrograde in a specific sign, I might put the Mercury card and the sign on my altar, or if I'm trying to for example, learn about my birth chart, all of the cards corresponding to my birth chart next to each other. So let's say, for example, I know that my sun is in Aries. I will put sun in Aries and then the house that it's in, and I will look at all the keywords, and that will help me understand a little bit more about my birth chart. I've done that with some of my friends' birth chart as well. And so because you have this visual stimulation, the keywords and everything, I find that it's really cool to do birth charts and learn about astrology. Of course, you could use this as an oracle as well and just go off keywords here or here, and I've done that before. I've even done journaling prompts with this, so I'll put a random card and then pick a keyword, and that would be my theme for what I want to journal about that day. Or it will help me create tarot spreads, for example, thanks to the keywords here. There is so much here you can do. I love actually the imagery. I think the imagery is very cool, even though I'm a bit pissed off because for the Aries one, I think like we have a massive, the Aries one, it's cool, but the car is a bit like Fast and Furious, and I'm like, no, I'm not about that life. I do love those flowers, kind of like agave plants. We have a lot of those here. I do love, I love most of the imagery. It's just the fast car. I feel like it's a little bit cliche, especially considering every single other signs has some really beautiful imagery, and we had the Fast and Furious. Like, why do you hate Aries so much? The guidebook is really good. So again, if you're wanting to learn astrology, I found this guidebook so helpful. This is for each of the card, you're gonna get so much information. So let's say you pick the Capricorn card, for example, you have a repetition of the keyword, but then for each of the cards you're gonna get a quality element, planet, house, symbolism, you're gonna get chakras, body parts, gemstones, even cities, which I found so cool, sense, style, and even tarot cards. Like, the person who wrote this deck put so much effort into linking all of the different astrological aspects with other things, and for me it really helped as well to have the tarot card reference, because this is some, tarot is my language, like tarot is my love language. So if someone speaks tarot, I usually get what they're trying to say. And then of course you have a bit of an explanation about what the signs stand for, and finally you have an oracle message. So regardless of the astrological aspect, what would it mean if you just get this card in like an oracle reading? And finally you also have a journaling prompt. So this deck is great, and again, it's like, why are not people picking this up? I think the box looks pretty shit, I'm not gonna lie, and so that's probably why people are not really looking forward to this deck. The backings are not the best, the quality, the cards are very thin, I will say that. So quality wise, it's not amazing production value, but in my memory it was really not that expensive, and I find it's a great beginner's tool. And this is called a Numinous Astro deck by Ruby Rorington and Bess Matassa. Let's move on to my second, in my opinion, most underrated oracle deck. This is a French version called L'Oracle des Cristaux Éternels by Jade Sky. However, this definitely exists in English because Jade Sky, I think, is Australian. So this is a crystal deck. I think the box is exactly the same in English or in French. So you would probably, if you type Oracle Crystal on Amazon and you see this green box, this is the one, but I will try to put the English name in the description box below. Eternal Crystal Oracle, and in English it came out 2016. Two crystal decks. I have this one and I have a tiny little one that I have shown in my mini deck collection. For me, they serve different purposes. The mini one is great more so for keyword, whereas for this one I really use it with the idea of crystal associated with it. So here are the backs, which to be honest are pretty fugly. Let's be real, not my favorite backings, but I can get over it. It came with silver edging, and considering this is one of the first oracle decks I got, so it's a few years old now, the edging, it definitely held the stand of time, because I've used this deck to the death. Don't have many oracle in terms of crystals, but I do really enjoy using crystals. Of course, I'm very conscious about the kind of ecological association with crystals, so some of my crystals are secondhand. If I can find some of those, I will purchase secondhand, because that way, it's like less wasteful, I find. but I was gifted a lot of crystals as well when I started to get into spirituality. Where we live, it's quite close to Madagascar, and so there is quite a lot of crystals that are coming from Madagascar or South Africa, etc. However, I always try and make sure that they are, you know, ethically sourced, and so I wouldn't buy from every vendor because I know, unfortunately, it used children to mine, etc. So you have to be very careful about who you purchase from and make sure that you find vendors that sell, you know, ethically mined crystal. That's just a parenthesis, but something that maybe I wasn't aware of a few years ago, and so I'm talking about it now in case, and some people might not be aware of it. Anyway, if you are actually into crystals and don't want to buy a lot of crystals because of those ethical or ecological or economical reasons, then maybe an oracle deck can be a good alternative. As you can see, this deck is, I find this deck beautiful. I hate the backing, but I think the front of the cards are gorgeous. It feels like you're in the crystal. So what happens is that you have like an image of almost as if you're in the amethyst in this example. Then you have an image of the crystal in consideration. You have the name of the crystal, you have a keyword, and then you have a chakra association for each of the card. But what's also cool with this deck is that superimposed on top of the crystal blown out micro image are also some kind of like hidden symbolism or images, etc. That the more you look at those images, the more you're going to see that there are several layers there that the artist has superimposed. Rutile quartz, and it's like you're inside the quartz, but I don't know if you can see superimposed you have the image of a door. It's because this particular crystal is linked with the idea of home, and so that's why you have a beautiful door. So I love actually finding the little secret images within the crystal. I really enjoy the good mix of crystal between some that are easy to find and some that are harder, because then if it's a crystal that I don't have, I can use the card as a replacement. It has the crystal energy. I believe everything is about intention. So if I put the intention that the card has the energy of the crystal, it will. That's how it works. Otherwise, everything I do is meaningless. And so that's my personal belief anyway, that intention is everything. And so I enjoy using this oracle deck for crystal energy. I really enjoy using it for just oracle purposes as well. So drawing a card and using the keywords. I love using it for thinking, okay, what crystal energy do I need right now? What energy do I need right now? What healing do I need right now? I really enjoy the messages in the guidebook. They're really straightforward, easy to understand. This is a crystal deck I don't see often, but for me, what makes this cool is this idea that we're almost in the crystal and the kind of like secret element to it, plus the fact that it has chakra association. When I was learning about chakras, it did really help me understand a little bit more about them. If you're a crystal lover, or you are thinking about getting into crystals but you don't really know where to start, and you do already enjoy oracle decks, I would recommend getting an oracle decks based on crystals, because this way, like I said, it's more economical, more ecological. You can see if it vibes with you or not, and then if there's particular cards that you keep pulling or a particular crystal that you feel really attracted to, then you can get out of your way to find it. Let's move on to a French deck. Yes, I know, I can't help myself. Every single one of my videos, apparently I have to show you a French deck. You know what, I'm not even ashamed about it. You can't stop me. So this is l'Oracle Bleu, and it's a French deck, but it has keywords in English and Spanish and French. And this is massively underrated because I never see any English-speaking people talk about this deck. I've seen this deck mentioned on French channels, but never on English-speaking channels, which is a shame because, like I said, you will see that the cards are actually in 3 different languages. So this is a mass market deck. It's by Grimaud, and so there's a few editions of this l'Oracle Bleu, which, by the way, is the blue oracle. Because you'll see that everything is blue. You might see if you go on Amazon.fr or even in your, like own Amazon websites, you might see different boxes because I think it was edited by different publishers. But at the end of the day, the idea is the same. You get the same deck, I think, same size and everything. Here are the backs, which are beautiful. on the contrary of the last one, which was horrendous. This is one of my favorite backing. I really love this lotus flower. And actually, now thinking about it, why have I not edged this in blue? This is a mistake. I need to fix this. The Oracle Bleu is blue. Surprise, surprise. But this is a very great oracle deck for more, I would say, potentially divination purposes. As you can see, each of the card, you have the name in French, the name in Spanish, and the name in English. I think this deck is actually massively underrated because, well, it's in 3 languages, so the amount of people who could use it. I think this has a great balance of lots of different keywords. So you have your more divinatory kind of regular meanings, such as woman and man. This is an older deck, so at the time, you know, they didn't really have the gender neutral being like we do now, because this has been out for a while, like a long time. It also has cards such as this one, like the law and work and things like that, relationships and money, things like that. You have seasons to date, for example, your particular readings, so you'll have spring, winter, summer, etc. But you also have some more potentially self-development kind of vibe as well, mixed with the divination one. So I think this is a great kind of all-rounder oracle deck, but maybe more so based around divination. You know what I mean, like answering more predictive readings. This is what I'm looking for. This is a great one for that. If you're trying to find out a little bit more of a succinct answers around what's going on at work or what's going on in your relationship, this would be a good one. For me, this works almost like a Lenormand kind of vibe, except it has a lot more card and the artwork is beautiful. I have done lots of different kind of readings with this deck. I've done predictive readings. I have tried it for more journaling prompt ideas or more self-development readings, and it has worked as well for those like more spiritual kind of readings. But I find that it really sings best for anything kind of predictive. I do tend to read personally more around the self-empowerment, self-development, healing, spiritual side. But there is nothing wrong with doing some predictive reading. I think it's all a case of balance and making sure that when you ask something, you don't ask again like 3 days later, because most likely the answer won't have changed, or you'll just get confused because the answers will start to get muddled. Some of the cards are, you know, like not so happy, like we have sacrifice, for example, I just shown you, which is good. Like I always say I like a good mix of light and shadow, especially in my oracle deck. I find with tarot it's inherently balanced, but sometimes with oracle it's very always love and light, some of them anyway, whereas for me I like a good balance because life is not always love and light, and so I need that kind of light and shadow vibe. You see that you also have element cards, and those element cards can be linked to the element or to the astrological signs. So you could even do things like, for example, who's the next person I'm gonna meet, and if you get like this card, then it means they would probably have a sun sign in either of those fire signs, for example. I find this deck incredibly beautiful. Like, look at this patriarch card with the elephant. It's gorgeous. The tree of life here, this doubling card, the artwork is just stunning. I love that it's everything blue. Everything looks a bit cosmic-y, alien-y. It's just a very unique deck. I think the aesthetic of it is so different. I find it very beautiful, and I really feel like this is so underrated, and I think so many people could enjoy this deck. And the fact that the keywords are actually on the cards in English and Spanish is even easier to use than some of the decks I show you on my channel where everything is in French. I do think that a lot of the French decks you could use intuitively because the images, you know, speak for themselves. But with l'Oracle Bleu, you don't even have to do that because the keywords are actually in 3 different languages, and that's awesome. You do get a little guidebook. It has additional keywords, so for each of the cards you do have additional keywords. The guidebook though is all in French, I will say that. But honestly, because it's like fairly straightforward, if you get the work kind of card, you know it's about work. You don't need a guidebook that tells you it's about work. So, you know, it's fairly straightforward. Let's move on to another very cool little mass market deck. This is Wisdom for Healing Cards by Caroline Myss. Caroline Myss you might know from archetype cards. I think it's very popular. Archetype card is very popular. It comes in a big red box and it has a ton of archetype cards around lots of different archetypes. How many times can I say archetype in one sentence? Please do not take a shot every time I say archetype or you'll be drunk in 5 minutes. So this deck, her deck, this Wisdom for Healing card, I feel like kind of has gone under the radar because her more famous deck is the archetype one. And before the Wild Unknown Archetypes Oracle deck by Kim Kranz came out, Caroline Smith's archetype cards were the most famous one. So I didn't really know about this particular deck, and I found it by pure chance on Book Depository, and it's only after that I realized it was the same person that did the archetype ones. It doesn't come with a guidebook because, as you're gonna see, the meaning of the cards are on the back of them. And so I really like this deck because, as the name would suggest, Wisdom for Healing cards, they are all about healing yourself. You get the beautiful imagery on the front of the card with great keywords that are all to do with self-healing, self-love, self-empowerment, getting better, transforming yourself, trying to heal yourself. Like, this is amazing. And then at the back of the card you get a lesson of the day, and I find the writing so impactful. It is not too much, it's just enough. Whether I use it for myself, whether I use it for my friends, whether I use it in my pick a card reading, this deck is always on point. So for example, for this, let's pick one by chance. We have Observe Your Attitude, and the lesson would be: determine whether you spend most of your energy in a positive or negative frame of mind. Do you have to remind yourself to be positive, or are you naturally that way? Your goal: to become mindful of whether you're unconsciously positive or negative. Not only are the messages on the backs really great, but I find the images beautiful, and I love the fact that surprisingly it does have some diversity. And I say surprisingly because for a deck that I think has been out for a bit over a while, I mean, I'm not even sure when this deck came out, but I feel like it's potentially a bit older. I find the drawing so beautiful, and so there's definitely a beautiful diversity of skin tones here and different beings, which I really love. There is a great kind of balance between more shadow subjects and more light subjects. I think you could do so much with this deck. You could use it for any kind of questions around healing, daily journaling prompt, daily cards like what do you have to do today, what is your message for the day, etc. You could definitely use if you are in some kind of groups, like healing groups. And the imagery is so beautiful. And look at this, Choose to Heal. I love this card. Of course I love this card. It's a beautiful wave, and the name of my channel is The Waves of Your Soul, so this has to be my favorite card. You could use for so many different people. This is very approachable. I've definitely used this for friends who are not so much into, like, they want to get a message and they want to get, they want to know what they need to work on, etc. But they don't want to be told to connect with their third eye chakra and talk to their archangels, which is so fair because not everyone is wired that way. And so for people who are not really into that spiritual side of things, this is great. Very underrated, I think. Total hidden gem. Let's move on to an indie deck. So this is the Faceted Garden Oracle, and this is by Claire Mack. And Claire Mack has actually put out another indie oracle deck that I also have because, I can't be helped. Her most famous oracle deck is the Illuminated Earth Oracle. I am sure if you watch a lot of oracle videos and TarotTube, etc., you most likely know this deck. It is quite known in the tarot oracle world for good reason. It's a great deck, it's very good varied keywords, it's inspired by nature, etc. What a lot of people don't know is that actually Claire Mack has done a second oracle last year called the Faceted Garden Oracle, and this is totally inspired by her garden, by nature, by plants, and by processes around the garden. And I find this deck underrated because it seems to be more her first deck that seems to be shown and not so much this one. So the deck comes with one of those little pamphlets, and so you get additional keywords for each of the cards. The great thing about those kind of decks where it's just a keyword and the imagery is that you don't really need to reference the pamphlet. You end up making your own kind of meaning associations with it. Here are the backs, which are beautiful. I love those backs, they're gorgeous. The edging is like holographic. This is satisfying, isn't it? Let's forget about the world for like 2 seconds and just admire this beautiful rainbow edging. Continuing on with today's program. So this artwork is very distinct. If you know Claire Mack, you know that you see this and you remember that it's hers. She has very distinctive kind of artwork. It's kind of like collage, but very geometry inspired. There's some symbolism here, some mandalas, and it's just very unique and very cool. So first of all, the artwork I love. Second of all, I love the fact that it's garden or nature inspired, because the keywords are so different to your typical kind of oracles that you would see. For example, morning song. Metamorphosis is maybe a bit more common, but you have things like herbal ally, mycelium, for example. Those are not the typical kind of keywords or association, etc. that you would see in every single oracle deck, so I really like that. You know, the spade, again, this is all about what are you planting in your inner garden? Are you trying to feed the right seeds, etc. You have some moon cards here, a wreath or wreath, I never know, pollinator. And this deck is really cool. I think it pairs beautifully with a lot of tarot decks, but it pairs for me particularly beautifully with any kind of nature inspired decks, of course. So for example, my Gaian tarot, my Jonas Ayas tarot, which is an indie deck that is, you know, totally green and full of plants. I'm sure this would pair beautifully with a Herbcrafter tarot, with any kind of decks that really is inspired by the natural world, by Mother Nature, etc. I think this would look so nice next to. Even things like the Wild Unknown and things like that, I think could be a killer combo. Cardstock is beautiful. I never really talk about cardstock on my channel, but this is a great quality. I mean, in the deck, the cardstock is matte, it's very beautiful, it's not too thick, not too thin. This was actually a Kickstarter that I backed, but she does sell those now on her Etsy shop, so I'll leave the link in the description box. I'm very much a nature lover, just like I am. This is absolutely stunning, and it is the Faceted Garden Oracle by Claire Mack. I have 3 decks left, so let's move on to Inner Compass card, and I have the French version, but this definitely exists in English as well, maybe even in other languages, because I think the creator is from the Netherlands. This is a great little deck. So I found this mass market in France. I think the English version is mass market as well, and I think potentially that there are several different types of those inner compass. I have the cards of the internal compass, but I think there might be some love ones of those similar kind of inner compass card. I think there might be some ones around work, I'm not sure, but I think this is the first one that they released, and it comes with a great guidebook where for each of the card you get a message. Doesn't look like much, but the messages are amazing. This is a deck that I would have never bought if I had looked at the images before buying, because the images are actually pretty, how can I say that? Trying to come up with something intelligent yet nice to say. Uneventful and uninspiring, I guess we can say that. They are very minimalistic, and this is a deck I got very early on in my oracle and tarot journey. So at the time I was buying it not really knowing about TarotTube, not really knowing that you could search for decks before buying them, not knowing this whole world existed. So I just bought it because it was available and the back looked interesting, but I didn't even know what the cards were looking like. And now looking at them, you're probably thinking, oh, this is not great, like, you know, it's very minimalist, and so I totally understand. But there's more to this deck than meets the eyes. So first, here are the backs, and the cardstock in the French edition is so thick, like honestly really thick, but still easy to manipulate. Really good quality cards actually. And as you can see, for each of the card you get kind of like an abstract, almost minimalist painting and 1 keywords, but the keywords are very focused around self-help, self-empowerment, self-healing, personal development. So for example, we have the Observer, we have letting go, we have shining bright, compassion, taking time for oneself, little by little, step by step. This is like, for heaven's sake, I love this card. I love swearing. We have the party card, we have slowing down, and anyway, you get the gist. It's more keywords that are around self-development and personal development, personal healing, etc. But the way this deck is built is actually very clever and interesting. The person who created this deck inspired herself by different kind of currents of thoughts. So you will have some cards that are referring to philosophies, some around shamanism, some are linked to archetypes, some are linked to chakras, some are linked to Maya wisdom, and some are linked to science and psychological concepts. And so you can see that there was a lot of thought behind the keywords of this deck, and the way that they are kind of categorized is that you'll see on the cards you have little symbols, and so those kind of symbols corresponds to the different families, and it allows you to see if it's a chakra card, if it's a psychological card, if it's a card referring to Mayan wisdom, etc, etc. The way that the guidebook is written is very empowering, like it doesn't hold your hand, and at the same time it's still gentle. So for me, I really actually appreciate this deck, and I'm so glad I bought it, and I wasn't actually judging it based on, in a way I'm glad I didn't know what it looked like. Otherwise, like I said, I definitely wouldn't have bought it, because for me this is a deck I go to when I'm having a bit of a, most likely, this is something I've been very open on my channel before, but I do have recurrent like pretty heavy health issues, and so I tend to have some flare-ups and some moments where my body just goes in shut down and I'm in a lot of pain, and so I'm navigating those waters of illness. When that happens, usually my nervous system is on fire, and I tend to have to be very specific about the decks I choose to work with at that time to help me navigate those kind of more difficult times, because anything too much will potentially make my already emotionally flammable and physically flammable self worse, and this is a perfect soothing balm for that, because the artwork is non-threatening. It's actually quite basic and simple, so when you're like on overdrive, it gives me space to think. I think also for people who maybe suffer from anxiety or anything like that, this could be a great deck, because again, it's not gonna overly like stimulate you, and it might help you, the white space can help you like cool down and gives you space to breathe, etc. And again, the meanings are straight to the point. You don't have to think for 10 to 15 minutes what the cards are trying to tell you. It's very easy to understand, and when I'm having a difficult time and I just need a card to help me pull through, to help support me, for me this is perfect. Okay, let's move on to another indie deck that I think is so underrated. This is the Begin Oracle deck, and this is indie, so you can find it on Etsy, and I'm gonna put the link in the description box as per usual. This has 72 cards, so I love a big deck, and it's by Stacy Jane over at Little Magic Herbal Shop, but again I will put the link of her Etsy shop in the description box. As you can see, the cards are quite large. Here are the backs. It's a collage style, and this Oracle deck actually comes with a beautiful, huge guidebook that I don't think will fit in the camera. This looks almost like a workbook. For each of the card, you get keywords, you get mythological associations, crystal allies, sometimes you get astrological associations, you're gonna get a general meaning, sometimes you get journaling prompts, you always get an affirmation. This has so much information packed into it, and this guidebook is fantastic. There was so much work put into it. Sometimes you have herbal ally as well, crystal allies, like the creator really put so much effort into this. I love using this deck with the guidebook, but I also love using it intuitively, so we have built a good relationship. This deck is beautiful, and it's one of, I think it's in my top 3 favorite Oracle decks ever, which is a big statement, but as soon as I saw it, it was love at first sight. It's one of those decks that I resonate with so strongly. I just resonate with this deck so much. The imagery is beautiful, the keywords really speak to me. There are some more natural keywords, and they're like that you would potentially see everywhere, and then there's more unusual ones, and I love that. I absolutely adore the artwork. I have a thing for collage artwork. There's something about it that I really love, but this one is a good mix between more vintage kind of art with modern things. There's a lot of hands and a lot of crystals in this deck, and I have a thing with hands. Like, I really like hands in images. I think they're beautiful. So overall, this deck is everything I enjoy packed into one. Honestly, oh, this one I just love, you know, those like older hands. I find them beautiful. I don't know what it is, but I just really love hands. That makes me sound like a creep. Look at this sleigh card, so cool. This deck and I are so connected, and I never really see anyone talk about this deck that much. I find that maybe indie oracle decks, generally speaking, are underrated because they're more expensive. I totally understand. This is not cheap. This is not a cheap deck. So this is an investment, and I understand that not everyone can afford it. But if it's in your budget and you are attracted by this deck, I would highly, highly recommend it. It's underrated because I don't really see, I really rarely see this used at all, and yet it is so deep. It has a great, look at this death card, like, oh, it's so good. There is something very moving about this deck. There's something very deep. This is a great, like, again, great balance between light and shadow. I have had so much synchronicities happen with this deck, so I'll use this deck, and then, for example, whatever I see here will, like, I'll see, you know, whatever kind of imagery is here, I will see that in real life, or there will be something synchronistic happening. Yeah, this deck and I, it's ride or die. I will get buried with this deck. Like, this is coming with me in the afterlife. I have paired this deck with so many tarot decks, Match Made in Heaven, for example, decks like the Uncommon Tarot. This is just a really great underrated oracle deck. I know it's not cheap, but you get 72 cards. The cards are very large, the quality is great, you get a proper big guidebook with so much information in it that, you know what, considering it is individually printed and everything, I think it's a fair price because a lot of work went into it, and I love supporting individual artists. Okay, let's move on to my last underrated oracle deck. Drum rolls, we have the Morgan's Tarot, and you're probably thinking, girl, what? I thought we were talking about oracle decks, not tarot decks. Well, don't be fooled. This deck is full of surprises. First of all, the fact that it's called a tarot, and it's absolutely not a tarot deck. The Morgan's Tarot is an oracle deck. It doesn't follow regular tarot structure. It doesn't have major arcana, minor arcana, or anything like that. So I feel like it's just called tarot because it's a pack of cards that you can do some readings with, but that's about it with the tarot similarity. This is a US game. This is actually from the 70s. I mean, my copy is not, I wish it was, but this deck first came out in the 70s, but you can still find it fairly easy. It's still printed, so it's still like very easy to find, and it's one of those decks, yeah, originally published in 1970. This deck was very heavily inspired by hippies, kind of like flower power, Woodstock kind of vibe. If Woodstock was in a deck, I feel like this is what it would be. This deck is, let me start with by saying that this deck is bonkers, and I love that about it. It is the craziest, quirkiest, freakiest, strangest, but funniest deck I own, and yet it is so powerful. It gives really on point readings, and so it's one of those, it's an ovni, it's an UFO. Like, honestly, it is out of this world. It doesn't fit in any boxes. It's so weird, and I love it. So here are the backs, and you can see it says love is God, and the deck is all in black and white image, and then a keyword, and then inside you have a little black and white guidebook with additional meanings for each of the cards. Very unique. Like, some of the cards don't even have keywords, and like this one, for example, and so the meaning here is just like for you to divine, really. Some of them will have not even words, they will just be symbols, and you can either refer to the guidebook or impose your own meanings to the card. Some of them will just take the piss and laugh at you, like this tee hee ha ha, and it's just so strange, so quirky, and yet brilliant. You're gonna have a lot of fun with this deck. I absolutely adore this deck because it really does tell it to you like it is. It's not gonna, cuddle you. It's not gonna try and lie to you. It's gonna tell you what you need to hear, whether you want to hear or not. Sometimes it's gonna tell you things as well. You don't really know what the fuck you're looking at. Like, duck wackadoo. Are you looking at your own bumhole too much? Maybe it's time to, look around. Like, this is just not your typical oracle deck. And this is what I love it. Trip, love that one. Who am I? You have a round card here, you have a hand, there's nothing you can do, or is there? I mean, this person is literally trying to like divide the yin yang, that's interesting. This deck is deep, but you don't realize it's deep. For example, who is watching the cosmic drama is like so interesting. This deck is very inspired by consciousness and, things that would have been very popular in the 70s. Definitely this deck must have been created after someone was on an acid trip. I mean, let's be real. That's what it feels like. And yet I love reading with this deck. I think this deck is super interesting. It's really unique. This is one of my favorite cards. Do not meddle in the affairs of wizards, for they are subtle and quick to anger. I love using this deck for any kind of times when, one, I need to not take myself too seriously, and I need something that's gonna be like electric shock, like wake up, wake up Pearl. This is a Drag Race reference. When I need something that's gonna be very different, or when I need to also get out of some kind of a creative funk and I need ideas and I need new perspective, new ways of looking at things, this is the one I go to. This paired with the Aquarian Tarot or the Cosmic Tarot or any decks that are from the 70s is amazing. There's really something to be said about those older decks paired together. So much fun. This is so meta. What are you feeling now? 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 I'm feeling slightly dehydrated, to be honest. I think I need to drink some water. I very rarely see it, and yet it is beautiful, it's funny, it doesn't take itself too seriously. Here is the last card, Tomato, Potato, Eggplant, which is, again, like what the hell is going on? I don't know, but I'm here for it. So there you go, my friends. These were all my underrated oracle decks. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you have made it this far, I want to say thank you so much, and please comment down below if you've actually made it to the last deck. You can comment tomato, potato. That will actually probably confuse the hell out of everyone who has not made it this far. If you want to, comment down below tomato, potato, it will let me know that you've watched this video till the end, and it's honestly gonna make my day. So grateful for every single one of you who watches, who comments, who subscribes. Honestly, there's been so much love and support in this channel, and I'm very grateful for every single one of you, so thank you. Let me know in the comments down below, of course, what are your favorite underrated oracle decks, whether they're indie or mass market. I would love to know. And until my next video, as per usual, I am sending you so much love. Take care of yourself and keep navigating the waves of your soul. Bye!